It was a day I'd been waiting for, one of those rare, life-changing moments. I had just bought my very first BMW, the car I had dreamed about for years. I worked long hours, saved every penny, and finally it was mine. I couldn't stop looking at it as I parked in the driveway, the sun glistening off the shiny black exterior. I was proud. This wasn't just a car. It was a result of my hard work, and it felt like the start of a new chapter. But little did I know, my pride and joy would soon be shattered in the most unexpected way. That afternoon, I had to run a quick errand. I left my brother at home, assuming he'd be fine with the car in the driveway. After all, how bad could it be, right? He was my younger brother, a bit reckless at times, but I trusted him enough to watch over it for a few minutes. I didn't know that in those few minutes, my perfect world was about to come crashing down. When I returned, the first thing I saw wasn't my beautiful car, but a twisted, crumpled mess of metal and glass. My heart stopped. The new BMW, my dream car, was barely recognizable. And there, standing next to the wreckage, was my brother. He wasn't frantic or apologetic. No, he stood there with a smirk on his face, like it was just another typical day. "Don't worry," he said, almost laughing. "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me. They always do." It felt like the ground had slipped out from under me. How could he be so calm? How could he act like it didn't matter? And worst of all, what would my parents say? My brother, Jake, was always the center of attention in our family, but not in the way I would have liked. Unlike me, he never had to work hard for things. Everything just seemed to fall into his lap. He had a certain charm about him, this carefree, I can get away with anything attitude that somehow always worked in his favor. Growing up, he was the one who got out of trouble with just a smile or a quick apology. He never really faced consequences, whether it was breaking a neighbor's window with a baseball or getting into fights at school. Jake always found a way to talk his way out of it. And the worst part? Mom and Dad would always back him up, telling me to be patient and understand his side. It was like they had this invisible rule book where he could do no wrong, and I was just expected to forgive. I was the opposite, quiet, responsible, and focused on getting things done, while I spent hours studying for tests or working part-time jobs to save money. Jake spent his time partying, playing video games, or messing around with friends. But somehow, my efforts always seemed to go unnoticed. Jake, on the other hand, could show up late to dinner with a story about how he didn't mean it, and would get a pat on the back. It was frustrating, especially now. I had worked hard for my BMW, saved every dollar, and treated it like my treasure. But Jake, he was reckless with everything, including my car. And I knew, deep down, that no matter how angry I got, he would still find a way to get off the hook. It was always the same with him. Always. It was supposed to be a simple errand. I had just picked up some groceries and needed to drop them off at home before heading out again. The day was bright, clear, and almost perfect. I parked my brand new BMW in the driveway, took a moment to admire its sleek curves and glossy paint, then headed inside to grab my keys. "Jake," I called out, walking into the living room. He was sitting on the couch, glued to the TV as usual. "I'm just running to the store. Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone, okay?" Jake didn't even look up from his game. Yeah, whatever," he mumbled, barely acknowledging me. I hesitated for a second, but then decided I'd be back in 20 minutes or so. The car was brand new, but I trusted him enough not to think twice. He'd been driving for a couple of years now. He had his license, after all, and he was always borrowing my things without asking. So what harm could it do if I left him alone with my new car for a little while? As I walked out the door, I told myself not to worry, but in the pit of my stomach, I felt that familiar twinge of doubt. It was as if I knew something wasn't quite right. Maybe it was just the excitement of my new purchase clouding my judgment, but I brushed it off. Nothing bad had ever happened before. Jake had always been reckless, but he'd never gone too far. I quickly ran my errand, hoping to get back in time to finish some work I had planned for the afternoon. When I pulled into the driveway about 30 minutes later, everything seemed normal. There was Jake's messy backpack on the front porch, his shoes scattered around, but no car. I froze for a moment. Where was my BMW? The sudden wave of panic hit me. I rushed out of the car, scanning the driveway and street. The smooth black curves of my car were nowhere to be seen. Instead, I saw Jake standing there, next to something that looked like a wreck. My heart dropped when I realized what it was. My brand new BMW, smashed beyond recognition. It was as if the world slowed down. I felt like I was floating above the scene, watching in disbelief. The front of the car was crumpled like a soda can, the once pristine paint now covered in deep scratches and dents. The headlights were shattered, and the bumper hung off the side, dangling loosely. The tires were bent in strange angles. It was a mess. But it wasn't just the damage that shocked me. It was Jake's reaction. He didn't look scared. He didn't look worried. He looked amused. There was this strange, cocky smirk on his face, as if the whole thing was just a minor inconvenience for him. He didn't rush over to apologize, didn't seem concerned at all. He just stood there with his arms crossed, staring at me like I was the one overreacting. For a second, I didn't know what to say. My mouth felt dry, and the words wouldn't come. The world felt like it was spinning. "What the hell, Jake?" was all I managed to choke out. "What did you do to my car?" Jake shrugged, still smiling. "I was just taking it for a quick spin. It's not like I did it on purpose," he said casually, almost as if he was talking about a scraped knee instead of a total car. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "How did this happen?" I demanded, my voice rising. "How could you be so careless with it?" He just shrugged again. "Relax. It's just a car. Mom and Dad will fix it. They always do." My brain couldn't quite process what he was saying. It was like he didn't even care. The car I had worked so hard for, the car I had saved every penny to buy, was now destroyed, and Jake was acting like it was nothing. I wanted to yell, to scream, to do something to make him understand how much it hurt. But all I could do was stand there, frozen. It felt like the ground had fallen out beneath me, and I was stuck in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to lash out, but another part of me was already preparing for the next thing I would hear. Mom and Dad will fix it. And I knew it. I knew that was exactly what was coming next. Jake wasn't even fazed. As I stood there, staring at the wreckage of my car, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, he simply kicked a pebble on the ground and muttered, "It'll buff out. No big deal." His words hung in the air, thick with the disbelief I couldn't shake. My BMW, the car I'd worked so hard to get, was nothing but twisted metal and broken glass. And here he was, acting like it was just another day, like it was just another one of his usual messes. As if this was my problem, not his. I couldn't believe it. I could feel my face growing hot with anger, but the words wouldn't come out. Instead, I stood there just staring at him. His smirk was the worst part. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. No! It was like he found the whole situation amusing, like the wrecked car was some kind of joke to him. "Jake, this isn't funny." I finally managed to say, my voice tight with frustration. "You wrecked my car. It's not just a thing you can replace. This was my hard work." He turned to me then, still not an ounce of seriousness in his eyes. "I didn't mean to crash it, but stuff happens. You know I'm not perfect, right? It was an accident. You'll get over it." He ran a hand through his messy hair, not once looking at the car. He didn't even look guilty. I don't think he fully realized how much it meant to me. Or maybe he did, and he just didn't care. "Mom and Dad will make you forgive me," he added with a laugh, as if that made everything better. "They always do, right?" That line, "they always do," hit me like a slap in the face. It was as if he didn't even think I'd have the guts to hold him accountable. As if, in his mind, my parents would just swoop in, smooth things over, and everything would be fine. He didn't see it. He didn't understand. The wrecked car, the wasted money, the hours I'd put in, all of it meant nothing to him. To him, this was just another situation where he could be the careless one, and Mom and Dad would clean it up, and maybe they would, but not this time. Not if I could help it. The sound of the front door opening caught my attention, and I looked up to see Mom and Dad walking toward the driveway. For a brief second, I thought maybe they had finally realized how serious this was. But that thought quickly vanished as I saw the casual way they approached the scene. Mom was holding a bag of groceries, looking more concerned about her shopping than the wreckage of my car. Dad, as usual, had that relaxed, almost bored expression on his face, as if he didn't quite understand what all the fuss was about. Their reaction was so out of sync with how I was feeling, it made my head spin. I felt like I was in an alternate reality. "What's going on here?" Mom asked, glancing over at Jake. She didn't even acknowledge the car at first. Just him. Jake, still standing there with that same stupid grin on his face, pointed casually at the wreck. "No big deal, Mom. Just a little accident with his car. It's not that bad." Mom's eyes flicked over to the crumpled vehicle, and I braced myself for her reaction. Was she finally going to get it? Was she going to get angry? But instead, she shrugged, tossing the grocery bag on the porch. "It's just a car, sweetheart. No need to get all worked up." Jake didn't mean to do it. I couldn't believe it. My heart was pounding in my chest, and all I could do was stare at her, speechless. "Mom, do you even see this?" I practically yelled, pointing at the wreck. "This isn't just some fender bender. This car is ruined." Dad, who had been standing silently behind her, sighed and rubbed his forehead. "Calm down, kid. It's just a car. We'll take care of it. No reason to make a scene." I felt like my world was collapsing around me. How could they act like it didn't matter? This car wasn't just some material object to me. It was a result of years of sacrifice, my first real achievement. But all they saw was a simple mistake, one they were ready to brush aside. "Jake's fine, and that's what matters," Dad added, giving me a look that said he expected me to let it go. But the car, I started, but Dad cut me off with a raised hand. "Don't start," he said, his voice surprisingly stern. "Jake didn't mean to crash it. He'll help pay for the repairs, and we'll figure it out. End of story." That was it. That was all they had to say. "We'll figure out." I couldn't breathe. It was like a weight had settled on my chest. I knew this would happen. Mom and Dad always sided with Jake, no matter what. And now it was happening again. They weren't angry. They weren't disappointed. They weren't even concerned about the fact that my brand new car, my pride and joy, was now a mangled mess of metal. Jake stood behind them, still smirking, as if it was all going according to plan. I could feel my anger rising with each passing second. But the worst part was realizing that no matter what I said, no matter how hard I tried to make them see, my feelings didn't matter. They would always take Jake's side, always treat him like he could do no wrong. "I'm not letting this go." I finally managed to say, my voice cold, "Not this time." Mom turned to me, her face softening as if she thought I was overreacting. "Oh, sweetheart," she said in that condescending tone she always used when she thought she was being reasonable. "You'll calm down. You always do." And that was it. The car, the wreck, my feelings, none of it was important enough to change the family dynamic. It was always Jake who got the pass, and I was just the one who had to deal with the consequences. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them dismiss me this time. Not this time. The anger inside me wasn't just boiling anymore. It was a full-on eruption. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of it. My brother, standing there without a care in the world, and my parents, acting like nothing had happened, was too much to handle. The fact that they were so easily dismissing the destruction of my car, my hard-earned dream, felt like a slap in the face. "Jake is fine? Is that what you're focusing on right now?" I snapped, turning to my parents, who were still acting like the whole situation wasn't a big deal. "This isn't about him being fine. This is about the fact that my new BMW is completely totaled, and none of you seem to care." Mom's face tightened. "That's enough, young man," she warned, her voice calm but sharp. "You're overreacting. Jake didn't mean it, and he's upset, too. We'll sort it out. Sort it out." My voice cracked. "What's there to sort out? There's nothing to fix. The car's ruined." I could feel my hands shaking as I pointed toward the wreck. "But you don't care, do you? You never care about my things. You always let him get away with it." Jake's smirk faded for a moment, and he shifted uncomfortably. But it wasn't because he felt guilty. No, he was just realizing that I wasn't going to let this slide, as I usually did. He took a step toward me, trying to sound casual. "Hey, relax." I said, "I'm sorry, okay? It's just a car." "A car?" I repeated, incredulous. It's not just a car, Jake. This was my first big purchase. Do you have any idea how hard I worked for that? And now it's gone. And you think it's nothing? Mom shot me a warning look. But Dad spoke up, his tone even more condescending than before. We understand you're upset, but you need to stop making a scene. There's no need to be so dramatic about it. Dramatic? I almost shouted, my voice breaking. You wanted to calm down when my brother wrecked everything I've worked for, and you're just going to forgive him like it's nothing? Why am I always the one who has to be the responsible one? The one who has to put up with this? The words spilled out before I could stop them, and I could feel the heat in my chest. This wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about years of resentment building up, of always being the one to take the high road while Jake got away with everything. And here I was, fighting for the first time, and all they could do was defend him. You're acting like it's the end of the world, Dad said, shaking his head. You'll get over it, like you always do. You're family, and family forgives. But this time, I wasn't sure I could. Not this time. I muttered, and for the first time in years, I stood my ground. Jake's eyes flashed with a mix of annoyance and surprise, but it was too late. I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. As I stood there, feeling more isolated than ever, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to fully admit before. This wasn't just about the car. It was about the entire way our family worked, or rather, the way it didn't work. The pattern had always been there, but today, it hit me with brutal clarity. Jake had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, who got away with everything. He didn't have to try hard, and somehow, everyone around him bent over backward to make sure he was okay. It was like there were two sets of rules in our house, one for him and one for me, and I was tired of it. I'd spent my life being the responsible one, the one who got good grades, worked hard, and never caused trouble. But no matter what I did, it was never enough to earn the same kind of forgiveness that Jake received without question. Every mistake he made was easily wiped away by Mom and Dad. I was expected to understand, to forgive, to always put others before myself. But when it came to me, it was always a different story. There was never the same understanding, the same compassion. It was like I didn't matter as much as Jake did. And maybe that's what hurt the most. No matter how much I achieved, no matter how much I tried, the family dynamic never shifted. Jake was a priority. His happiness, his comfort, his mistakes, they always came first. For once, I wasn't going to keep swallowing my feelings. For once, I wasn't going to let Jake's behavior slide. But the hardest part was realizing that no matter what happened, this was a family I was stuck with. And as much as I loved them, this dynamic, this pattern of favoritism, would always be there, looming over me. As I stood there, my heart was torn between the anger I felt and the guilt that crept in almost immediately after. It was a struggle I knew all too well. I wanted to be angry, wanted to scream at my parents for dismissing my feelings, and at Jake for ruining something so important to me. But even as I clenched my fists, a part of me hesitated. Was I overreacting? I wondered. It wasn't just about the car, was it? No, it was about years of feeling overlooked, of always having to play the adult, while Jake got away with being a reckless, carefree kid. I had tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that things would change, or that I was just being sensitive. But now, the truth was staring me right in the face. I couldn't stop thinking about what my parents had said. You'll get over it, like you always do. It stung more than I expected. Every time I tried to speak up, every time I tried to assert myself, they always made me feel like I was being dramatic, like my emotions didn't count. I always had to get over things. Always. But the guilt, it kept sneaking up on me. Was I being too harsh on Jake? After all, he was my brother. Was I really willing to let a car ruin a relationship we had, no matter how complicated it was? He was my family. But that didn't mean I could keep letting him off the hook for his mistakes. I felt torn in two. My loyalty to my family, to Jake, clashed with the raw need to stand up for myself, to demand respect for once. The struggle was suffocating, and I didn't know which side to choose. What if standing my ground meant losing them altogether? Could I handle that? As the days passed after the crash, I couldn't shake the feeling of being stuck. torn between holding on to the family I knew and asserting my own worth. But deep down, I realized something crucial. I was tired of letting things slide. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of my brother's mistakes or accepting my parents' blind loyalty to him. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about me standing up for myself. For once. One evening, after another quiet dinner where Jake got off scot-free with one of his typical half apologies, I found myself walking into the living room, my heart pounding but my mind clearer than it had ever been. Mom and Dad were lounging on the couch, as usual, watching TV. Jake was, of course, somewhere else, probably playing a game, ignoring the situation entirely. I took a deep breath and turned to them. "We need to talk," I said, surprising even myself with the firmness in my voice. Mom paused the show, looking at me with raised eyebrows. Dad didn't even look up. "About what?" "It's about Jake." I began, my hand steady for the first time in days. "It's about how you always let him off the hook, how you never hold him accountable, and how you always expect me to just let it go when he does something like this." Dad sighed, like he already knew where this was going. But I wasn't going to let it slide anymore. I'm tired of being the responsible one while he gets away with everything. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter as much as he does. I've had enough. For a moment, there was silence. But in that silence, I felt something shift. Maybe it was small, but it was enough to remind me that my voice, my feelings mattered. And that maybe was the beginning of something I could finally own. The conversation I'd had with Mom and Dad wasn't a magic fix. It didn't instantly change everything. But it was a start that felt like a heavy weight being lifted from my chest. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth without fear of being dismissed. I had said what I needed to say, and for that, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: empowerment. Over the next few days, there was a shift. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, but I could sense it. Jake, ever the carefree spirit, was still Jake. Careless, a little too confident in his own charm. But now, there was a faint tension between us, one that hadn't been there before. And while it wasn't the easy-go relationship we'd once had, I didn't mind it. Things couldn't go back to the way they were. Not after what had happened. And maybe, just maybe, that was a good thing. As for Mom and Dad, they didn't exactly apologize for their behavior, but I could tell that they were listening now, in a way they hadn't before. They weren't quite ready to admit that they had been wrong, but I didn't need them to. I had done something more important. I had stood my ground, and in doing so, I had gained a small piece of respect that was long overdue. The wrecked car was eventually repaired, but the real change had nothing to do with the metal and glass. It had everything to do with me finding my voice and deciding, for once, that I mattered too. Family dynamics weren't going to change overnight, but at least now I knew that I had the power to make them shift, even if just a little. And that made all the difference.